In the annals of war, there are moments that defy reason, battles where courage, not firepower, turns the tide. This is the story of such a moment. A story where frail escort carriers and tin can destroyers faced off against the might of the Imperial Japanese Navy's finest. October 25, 1944, off the coast of Samar, when ordinary men stood alone in the face of annihilation and chose to fight anyway. The sea was restless that morning, rolling in long, gray waves as the rising sun bled across the sky. It was October 25, 1944, and the eastern horizon was filled with soft light that danced on the decks of the U.S. escort carriers of Task Unit 77-4-3, known simply as Taffy 3. These were support ships, small, slow, thinly armored vessels meant for transport and aircraft deployment, not direct combat. And yet fate had thrown them into the center of one of the most terrifying ambushes of the Pacific War. From the north, through the San Bernardino Strait, loomed a nightmare made real, a Japanese center, force led by the battleship Yamato, the largest warship ever constructed, accompanied by cruisers and destroyers, bristling with guns. It was a fleet built to kill, and it was bearing down on an American force that had no battleships, no heavy cruisers, and no reason to expect survival. Aboard the carriers, such as the USS Gambier Bay, White Plains, and Kalinin Bay, young sailors rushed to general quarters. Alarm bells screamed. Pilots sprinted across decks slick with sea mist, climbing into aircraft hastily armed with whatever was on hand. Depth charges, rockets, even machine guns. Some planes launched with only minutes of fuel. They didn't wait. They couldn't. Behind them on the beaches of Leyte, American soldiers were landing. If Taffy 3 fell, so would they. But in the chaos, resolve hardened. The destroyers USS Johnston, Samuel B. Roberts, and Hull turned to engage. They weren't built for this. They were barely over 2,000 tons in displacement, less than a quarter the size of the Yamato, and yet they charged into the jaws of death like wolves among lions. On the USS Johnston, Commander Ernest E. Evans didn't hesitate. "Gentlemen, we are going in," he told his crew, "and we're not coming out." With full speed, he drove the ship into the heart of the enemy formation. Shells rained down, waterspouts towering over the deck. But the Johnston fired back, torpedoes launched, main guns barking defiantly. They scored hits, real hits. And then again, the Johnston was struck repeatedly but refused to sink. Above, aircraft from the carriers dove again and again, strafing Japanese decks, dropping ordnance onto cruisers, dodging anti-aircraft fire in a sky thick with smoke. They had no air cover. They flew anyway. They had no time to coordinate. They attacked anyway. Some ran out of fuel and ditched at sea. Some returned, refueled, and launched again. The Samuel B. Roberts, affectionately called the destroyer escort that fought like a battleship, charged forward at flank speed. Her gunners loaded manually. Her torpedoes raced toward enemy hulls. And when her ammunition was gone, the crew kept firing with what little remained. As the Japanese ships closed in, they could see the eyes of their enemy through binoculars, and still they fired. But the cost was staggering. The hull was hit over 40 times before disappearing beneath the waves. The Samuel B. Roberts sank with most of her crew still aboard. The Gambier Bay took fire, her engines dead, her decks aflame, and slowly slipped beneath the sea. Hundreds of sailors were left adrift, clinging to rafts, many never recovered. And then, the impossible happened. The Japanese commander, baffled by the resistance, uncertain of what lay beyond the smokescreens, made a decision that changed history. He turned back. The mightiest fleet Japan had ever assembled retreated, not because they were defeated, but because a handful of brave souls convinced them they could not win. Taffy 3 had no right to survive, but they did, because they chose honor over fear, sacrifice over safety, because a few destroyers and planes bought time not with steel but with courage. In the years that followed, the names of these ships and the men aboard them would be carved into naval history, their actions studied in war colleges, their valor etched into stone. But more than that, their story lives on as a lesson that in the darkest hours, the heart of a few can hold back the tide of many. So the next time someone tells you that courage is measured in size or strength, Tell them about the battle off Samar, when the small stood against the mighty and did not yield. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to Good Old Days. Every day we bring you stories of forgotten heroes, lost love, and the moments that shaped who we are. Because the past is not gone, it lives in us.